Hello everyone, and welcome. This is the first video in my weekly football analytics series. So before we get into the latest rankings and match forecasts, I want to explain the model in a clear and simple way. The idea behind this report is not to guess results from a random mix of box score stats. It is built to estimate team strength from the quality of chances that teams create and allow. In other words, the foundation of the model is expected goals, not just raw scorelines. At the center of the system, every team carries two separate ratings. One rating measures attacking strength, and the other measures defensive strength. So instead of forcing team quality into one flat number, the model asks two different questions. How strong is this team at creating chances, and how strong is it at suppressing the opponent's chances? For each match, the model creates an expected goals number for the home side and another one for the away side. Those numbers come from the interaction between three things: the home advantage built into the league environment, the attacking strength of one team, and the defensive strength of the opponent. So when a stronger attack meets a weaker defense, the expected goals number rises. When a weaker attack meets a stronger defense, the expected goals number falls. After every match, the ratings are updated again. That matters because the model is not static. It moves with the season. But it also does not overreact to just one game. Newer matches matter more than older matches because recency is already built into the system through exponential decay. So this is not a one-time ranking. It is a living rating path that tries to reflect where each team stands right now. There's another important point here. The ratings are centered after every update, so the league average stays stable over time. That stops the whole system from drifting upward or downward as the season moves on. In practical terms, a positive attacking number means a team is creating chances at an above-average level. A positive defensive number means a team is doing a better-than-average job at limiting opposition expected goals. On top of that rating engine, there is a separate calibration layer. The purpose of that layer is not to redefine team strength. Its job is to take the latent expected goals state and turn it into match-level goal expectations that can be used inside the probability model. That step matters because a good rating engine and a good probability engine are related, but they are not exactly the same thing. Once those goal expectations are set, the report uses a Dixon-Cole score matrix to build the match probabilities. That gives us the probabilities for a home win, a draw, and an away win. It also gives us totals, including the probability of over 2.5 goals. The reason that layer is useful is that football scores are not perfectly independent, especially at the low end of the scoreline range. The Dixon-Coles adjustment helps the model treat low-scoring outcomes more realistically. After that, there is one more calibration step. A plat calibration layer is fitted on a separate validation window. That means the model is not just producing raw probabilities and hoping they look sensible. It is also trying to align those probabilities more closely with real outcomes over a clean out-of-sample window. Corners are handled separately. They do not simply come from the same path as goals. The model uses a different recursive rating path for corners and then applies a negative binomial distribution for corner totals. That is why the report can show both expected total corners and a probability for over 9.5 corners. In other words, the corner section is not a decorative extra. It is its own model layer. Another thing I want to make clear is that this report does not pretend that one exact scoreline tells the full story of a football match. That is why I do not collapse every game into one final score pick. Instead, the report shows the top 3 scorelines. That keeps the summary closer to the real probability distribution. In football, one score can be the most likely single outcome, while a different result type may still carry more total probability once all related scorelines are combined. The model also separates selection, calibration, and testing. Parameter selection is done on a validation window. Calibration is fitted on that separate validation set. Then performance is checked in a rolling walk-forward backtest. That means the testing stage only uses information that would have been available at that point in time. This matters because it reduces leakage and gives a cleaner picture of how the model behaves in a live setting. So what should you take away from all of this? This report is designed to be an analytical base layer. It gives you a structured view of team strength, recent form, expected goals, match probabilities, fair prices, and corner expectations. It is not pretending to capture every football variable in the world. It does not know every dressing room story, every injury update, every tactical late change, every weather shift, or every emotional factor around a match. What it does do is give you a disciplined, numbers-first framework. That is the role of the model. It gives the baseline. It gives the analytical skeleton. Then anyone using the report can decide how much weight to add from team news, context, motivation, scheduling pressure, or market movement. In future videos, I will break down the model in more detail. But for this first one, the key message is simple. This is a probability-driven football ratings system built on expected goals, split into attack and defense, updated recursively through the season, and turned into weekly forecasts through calibrated probability layers. That is the engine behind the report. Now let's move on to this week's numbers. Now that the methodology is out of the way, let's move into the actual Premier League report for this week and walk through what the numbers are saying. I want to break this into 4 parts. First, the main power table. Second, the recent form table. Third, the round 31 match forecasts. And fourth, the market radar, where the model highlights the strongest value zones on the current card. Let's start with the main table. At the top of the overall power index, the Gunners sit in first place with an overall rating of 0.538. Arsenal are not the top attacking side in the table, but they are carrying the strongest defensive number in the league snapshot, and that is what pushes them to the top overall. So the model is reading Arsenal as the most complete side right now rather than simply the most explosive one. Just behind them come the Blues. Chelsea are second overall on 0.439, and they are actually the strongest attacking side in the table. So while Arsenal lead through balance and defensive control, Chelsea's profile is driven much more by raw attacking strength. In third place, City come in at 0.406. Their numbers still keep them firmly inside the elite tier, but they sit just behind Arsenal and Chelsea in the current snapshot. Liverpool are fourth at 0.278, and United round out the top 5 at 0.219. That leading group tells you something important straight away. The model is not blindly mirroring the league table. It is trying to measure underlying strength from chance creation and chance suppression. So the top order is a structural view, not just a points view. Just outside the top 5, the Magpies sit 6th, followed by Brentford, Brighton, Bournemouth, and Leeds to complete the top 10. The bottom end of the table is just as revealing. Forest are in 16th, Spurs are 17th, Sunderland are 18th, Wolves are 19th, and Burnley sit bottom. That does not mean those teams are locked into one final destiny. It simply means that in this current snapshot, their underlying attack and defense profile is weaker than the rest of the league. Now let's move to recent form, because this is where the short-term picture changes. The Reds are first in the last 5 match form table. Liverpool have 10 points in that stretch and the strongest form score in the report. So even though they are 4th in the overall power table, they are the hottest team in the model's recent form section. Everton are 2nd in the form table, which is one of the more surprising lines in the report. Arsenal are 3rd, West Ham are 4th, Newcastle are 5th, City are 6th, Chelsea are down in 8th. And United, despite collecting 10 points from the last 5, still sit in the lower half of the form ranking because the form score is not driven by points alone. It also uses expected goals surplus, so the model is still separating results from process. At the bottom of the recent form table, Villa are last. Leeds, Palace, Spurs, and Burnley also sit in the weaker recent group. So when you compare the main power table with the form table, you already get a richer picture. One table tells you who looks strongest in the broader rating path. The other tells you who is moving well in the short run. Now let's go match by match. The first fixture is Bournemouth against Manchester United. This is one of the tighter games in the report. Bournemouth are projected at 1.61 expected goals, while United come in at 1.56. That is almost level at the chance creation layer. But once the full probability model is applied, United still edge the match with a 47.0% away win probability. The draw is 29.8%, and the home win is 23.2%. So the key message here is not that United are overwhelming favorites. They are not. The key message is that this is a close game where the model still gives the Red Devils the clearest route to victory. The scoreline cluster also reflects that balance. 1-1 is the most likely single scoreline, with 2-1 and 1-2 sitting close behind. On the corner side, this match stands out. Expected corners are 10.58, and over 9.5 corners comes in at 60.7%, the strongest corners angle on the board. Next up is Brighton against Liverpool. This is another very balanced game in expected goals terms. Brighton are at 1.36, Liverpool are at 1.37. That is almost a dead heat in raw chance expectation. But the probability layer still tilts toward Liverpool. The Reds are at 46.5% to win, with the draw sitting high at 34.0% and Brighton at 19.5%. That is an important kind of match to understand. The expected goals are close, the draw risk is high, but Liverpool still come out on top in the total distribution. This is not a blowout projection. It is more like a competitive game where Liverpool's overall outcome path still looks strongest. Over 2.5 goals is 52.1%, and expected corners are 10.25. Fulham against Burnley is one of the clearer home setups in the report. Fulham are projected at 1.89 expected goals, while Burnley are down at 0.93. The home win lands at 48.9%, the draw is 23.3%, and Burnley's away win probability is 27.7%. That tells you Fulham are in a good spot, but not in a runaway spot. The top score cluster is 1-1, 2-0, and 1-0. So the shape of the distribution says the Cottagers have the edge, but the game still carries enough uncertainty to keep the draw and the away upset alive inside the model. Over 2.5 goals is 51.2%, and expected corners are 10.11. Now to what is probably the strongest side call in the report, Everton against Chelsea. The Toffees are projected at 1.38 expected goals. Chelsea come in at 1.95. That is a meaningful gap. The away win probability for the Blues is 60.2%, which is the strongest directional match lean on the card. The draw is 28.8%, and Everton are down at 11.0%. This is one of those games where the model is clearly taking a side. The score cluster is led by 1-1, then 1-2, then 0-2. That may sound strange at first, but it is the normal behavior of football score distributions. A single draw scoreline can be the most likely exact score, while the away win still carries the largest total probability once all of its winning scorelines are added together. Over 2.5 goals is only 45.5%, so the model likes Chelsea much more strongly in the result market than it does in the goals market. Leeds against Brentford is another useful example. Leeds are sitting at 1.70 expected goals, and Brentford are at 1.50. But even with that, Brentford still come out as the most likely winner at 44.2%. The draw is 28.8%. Leeds are at 27.0%. So this is a case where the full score distribution matters more than a quick glance at expected goals. The Bees are not being priced as dominant, but they are still the most likely winner once the whole matrix is taken into account. Over 2.5 goals sits at 46.9%, with expected corners at 9.75. The next match is Newcastle against Sunderland. The Magpies are in one of the better home positions of the week. Newcastle are projected at 1.91 expected goals, while Sunderland are at 0.93. The home win probability is 49.6%, the draw is 22.9%, and Sunderland are at 27.5%. Again, this is a strong but not extreme home position. The leading scorelines are 1-1, 2-0, and 1-0. The score cluster says Newcastle are favored, but the match is still not projected as a completely open game. Over 2.5 goals is 51.0%, and expected corners are 9.74. Then we have Aston Villa against West Ham. This is one of the more interesting market-style spots in the whole report. Villa are at 1.47 expected goals, and West Ham are at 1.21. But the away win still comes out as the highest single result probability at 40.4%. The draw is 32.7%, and the Villa home win is 27.0%. That makes this one of the sharpest examples of why the report should be read as a probability map rather than as a basic score guess. On the surface, the expected goals gap does not look huge, but inside the full distribution, West Ham still come out on top, and that is why the Hammers also appear as the top 1x2 Kelly value on the market radar. The final match on the card is Spurs against Nottingham Forest. This is another balanced game. Tottenham are at 1.37 expected goals, Forest are at 1.24, and the away side still comes out on top at 42.9%. The draw is high again at 34.4%, and Spurs are at 22.7%. This match also carries the highest over 2.5 goals probability in the report at 53.4%. So if one game on the board looks most likely to drift into a more open scoring environment, this is the one according to the model. That brings us to the final section, the market radar. In the 1x2 category, West Ham away to Villa leads the Kelly ranking. Chelsea away to Everton is next. Burnley away to Fulham also appears high in that list, which tells you the market is offering enough price to keep the away side alive as a value case, even though Fulham remain the more likely winner. In the goals market, the model's strongest Kelly positions are all on the under 2.5 side for 3 matches: Bournemouth against Manchester United, Brighton against Liverpool, and Everton against Chelsea. And in the corners market, the highlighted angle is under 9.5 corners in Leeds against Brentford. So that is the full weekly picture. Arsenal, or the Gunners, lead the overall power table through defensive strength and balance. Liverpool, the Reds, lead recent form. Chelsea, the Blues, provide the strongest directional match lean of the week away to Everton. Tottenham against Forest carries the highest over 2.5 goals probability, and Bournemouth against United gives the strongest over 9.5 corners signal. This is the analytical base layer for the week. It is a numbers-first map of team strength, form, match probabilities, fair prices, and corner expectations. The model builds the structure. The final context call still belongs to the person using it.